Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Quick update. The series What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge and What If a Venerated Soul Reincarnated in Danmachi world are now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these three fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if hosting Q&A in One Piece world? Please vote in the poll and let me know which two stories you'd like to see next. I'll take the top 2 picks and start working on those series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 341, Leaving One Punch Man World, Conquering Strawhat, Claiming Amber, Eula and Jean. The next day. As expected, Tatsumaki returned to the villa early in the morning. However, seeing Roy and Fubuki in bed together, she exploded. After all, she had offered herself to Roy to protect her sister from being defiled. Yet here they were. Roy! What did you do? Tatsumaki shrieked, hovering in the air, her finger pointed accusingly at Roy, her telekinesis wreaking havoc in the room. Roy yawned, then casually grabbed Tatsumaki, pulling her down and delivered a swift spanking. Are you going to behave now? Why, yes. Tatsumaki, caught completely off guard and thoroughly embarrassed, immediately surrendered, being stripped bare in front of her sister while being disciplined like this was mortifying beyond belief. However, Roy wasn't going to let her off so easily. He proceeded to thoroughly discipline Tatsumaki, right there in front of Fubuki. Fubuki, though blushing furiously, watched intently as her usually domineering older sister was put in her place. A few moments later, punctuated by Tatsumaki's high-pitched squeals, she finally submitted completely. Thus began a few months of peaceful cohabitation. They occasionally went out to deal with monsters, but mostly spent their time at home, enjoying each other's company in various ways. Eventually, Roy decided it was time to return to Little Garden with Fubuki and Tatsumaki. Seriously, Roy? More girls? Black Rabbit sighed, seeing the two beautiful newcomers. What's wrong, Black Rabbit? Jealous? Maybe you should just give yourself to me now. Then you wouldn't have to worry about being neglected. Roy teased with a grin. Who would give themselves to you? Black Rabbit blushed furiously and scurried away. Roy shrugged. He had Seiko show Fubuki and Tatsumaki around Little Garden. He was surprised to find that despite the considerable time that had passed in the One Punch Man world, only a month had passed in Little Garden. It seemed he would have to wait a bit longer for Shiroisha to reclaim her divinity. But it didn't matter. He would visit another world. This would also give him more time to research the simulated star creation map. With that in mind, Roy checked the system and saw several new worlds available. Strawhat caught his attention. It was the world of Genshin Impact, a game he enjoyed, filled with beautiful waifus. Strawhat it is! With those words, Roy vanished. He's gone again? Black Rabbit had just returned, seemingly wanting to discuss something, but seeing Roy disappear, she sighed. Strawhat continent above Mondstadt City. Roy looked down at the city below, a mix of familiarity and novelty. Familiar because it was Mondstadt, the starting point of the game. Novel because it was drastically different from the game. Mondstadt was much larger, with a population of millions, far exceeding the game's depiction. He instantly located Amber, currently on patrol, and other familiar faces within Mondstadt, Jean, Lisa, Barbara, all his future wives. This time, he wasn't going to bother with conventional courtship. He was a demon lord, after all. Why play by the rules? With a flash, he vanished. Roy reappeared near Amber, dressed in her signature red, bunny-eared outfit. Amber, as a reconnaissance knight, quickly noticed him. She approached him with a few graceful leaps. "Hello? Are you a traveler from another nation?" she asked, seeing his unusual attire. "Amber, look into my eyes." Roy's gaze seemed to hold a strange power, instantly increasing Amber's affection for him, dispelling any suspicions. Thus, his identity issue was resolved. "Roy, come with me. I'll take you to Mondstadt," Amber said with a cheerful smile, inviting him to follow her. "Sure." Roy nodded, then casually wrapped his arm around her slender waist. Amber blushed slightly but didn't object. As they walked along a quiet path, Roy's hand gently caressed Amber's sensitive waist. Amber's face grew redder and redder. "Amber, what am I to you?" Roy asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. He had used a bit of charm magic, but he wanted to know how she perceived him now. "You're my husband, of course," Amber replied shyly. "Oh?" Roy was surprised but pleased. This made things much easier. Several hours later, they continued towards Mondstadt city. The city was bustling with activity, and the people seemed cheerful. "Isn't Mondstadt beautiful, Roy? It's all thanks to acting Grand Master Jean. Ever since Grand Master Varka left with most of the knights," Amber chattered happily, pointing out the sights. The passers-by looked at them curiously, seeing the beautiful girl with the handsome young man. "Amber, who's this?" a young woman in a blue knight's uniform asked. "This is Eula. Eula, this is my husband, Roy." Amber introduced them cheerfully. "What?" Eula's eyes widened. She had never heard Amber mention having a husband. She pulled Amber aside. "Amber, you've never even been married. What are you talking about?" "But, he is my husband." Amber looked at her, puzzled by Eula's reaction. "What are you two talking about?" Roy approached them, and Eula instinctively turned to look at him, falling under his charm magic. "Welcome back, hubby," Eula said softly, a gentle smile on her face as she moved to his side. Roy nodded in satisfaction. Seeing Eula up close, she was truly stunning. Although his methods were less than honorable, he didn't care. He would cherish her. "Roy, didn't you want to meet acting Grand Master Jean? Let's go," Amber said, excitedly pulling him towards the Knights of Favonius headquarters. People looked at them curiously, seeing the infamous Eula with them, but they didn't interfere. Soon they arrived at the headquarters. "Acting Grand Master Jean!" Amber called out. "Amber! And Eula!" Jean greeted them with a smile, then looked at the unfamiliar young man behind them curiously. "And who might this be?" "Acting Grand Master Jean, this is Roy, my husband." Amber introduced him cheerfully. "What?" Jean stared at Amber in disbelief. "Amber, do you know what you're saying?" "What's wrong?" Amber tilted her head, puzzled by Jean's reaction. Jean frowned. "Acting Grand Master, isn't it normal? Roy is our husband. Didn't you know?" Eula also looked at Jean curiously. "Eula, even you." Jean's face paled. She now understood what was going on and turned her gaze to Roy. "What did you do to them?" Roy shrugged. "I simply made them my women. And you, acting Grand Master Jean, you'll be my woman soon too." "Humph. This is the Knights of Favonius headquarters. You can't just do whatever you want." Jean stood up, her hand resting on the Favonius sword at her side. The air crackled with anemo energy. "Don't be so uptight, acting Grand Master Jean. What's so bad about being my wife? I'll treat you well." Roy chuckled, then unleashed his charm magic. His charm magic, amplified by his power, was irresistible. The room fell silent. A moment later, Roy was sitting comfortably in the acting Grand Master's chair, with Jean seated on his lap. He admired her beauty. Chapter 342, Kissing Jean, Conquering Lisa? Looking at Jean in his arms, Roy didn't hesitate and kissed her, stealing the first kiss from the usually pure, dignified acting Grand Master Jean. Meanwhile, in the library, not far from the Grand Master's office, Lisa sensed a disturbance in the elemental energy. That anemo energy. Is it Jean? Sensing something amiss, she hurried towards Jean's office. She opened the door and saw Jean, the acting Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, sitting on top of a man, engaged in a passionate kiss. Lisa's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't believe Jean would do such a thing, in her office, no less. Wait! Who are you? She demanded, realizing that she didn't recognize the man. Eula and Amber were also present but didn't seem inclined to intervene. Something was definitely wrong. Roy released Jean, who was almost suffocating, and looked at Lisa, his eyes lighting up. He had to admit, Lisa was even more alluring than Amber, Eula, or even Jean. He had a weakness for mature women like Lisa. Her purple attire, black stockings, and voluptuous figure were incredibly seductive. Who wouldn't be attracted to such a mature and alluring woman? Lisa, call me Roy, he said with a smirk. Roy? Are you from Liyue? What have you done to Jean? Lisa asked, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. While she had some theories about his identity, her priority was rescuing Jean. It's like this. I'm quite fond of acting Grand Master Jean, so I'm making her my wife. And I'm also quite fond of you, Lisa, Roy said bluntly, stating his intentions without hesitation. Lisa frowned. If he truly cared for Jean, he should pursue her through proper channels, not resort to this. She had observed that Jean didn't seem to be resisting. There was only one explanation. Jean was under the influence of some kind of power or ability. Jean, are you all right? Lisa tried to reason with her. Jean shook her head. Lisa, I'm fine. It's rather rude of you to barge into the acting Grand Master's office like this. Jean, you. Lisa was taken aback. Lisa, since my husband is also fond of you, why don't you become his wife as well? Jean said, her words confusing Lisa even further. Jean, snap out of it. This man is using some kind of ability to control you. You don't even know him. It's useless. Roy shook his head, releasing Jean and approaching Lisa. While my methods might be unconventional, Jean is mine now. Nothing you say will change that. As he approached, Lisa's eyes narrowed, and her vision glowed. Purple lightning crackled in her hand. A powerful elemental force filled the room, making the air heavy with anticipation. I'll give you one chance. Release Jean, Amber, and Eula from your control, or I'll have to get serious, Lisa said, a dangerous glint in her eyes, the lightning dancing around her. While Jean was considered Mondstadt's strongest fighter, Lisa was arguably the most powerful person in Mondstadt currently. Hailed as a once-in-a-century genius by the Summer Academia, her strength was undeniable. Roy chuckled. How about this? If your lightning can even touch me, I'll release Jean, Amber, and Eula. But if it can't, you'll become my wife. Willingly. How about it? Lisa's eyes narrowed further. His confidence unnerved her. It seemed Jean, Amber, and Eula were under the influence of a charm ability. How could she break it? Countless thoughts raced through Lisa's mind. Fine. I accept. She finally agreed. She didn't have any other options. Good. I'll stand right here. Give it your best shot, Roy said casually, beckoning her forward. Lisa frowned, then unleashed her lightning. Rumble! A thunderous roar echoed through the Knights of Favonius headquarters. But strangely, no one reacted. Roy had already transported them to a subspace. While it looked identical to Jean's office, it was a separate dimension. Their battle wouldn't affect the real world. Roy, bathed in the lightning, simply smiled at Lisa, completely unharmed. Lisa's heart sank. That hadn't been a casual attack. She had used her full power. Yet he hadn't even bothered to dodge. He had simply tanked it. Is that all you've got? It tickles. It seems you've lost our bet, Lisa. You're mine now, Roy teased, amused by her shocked expression. Then I'll have to get serious. Lisa's playful demeanor vanished. Her vision glowed even brighter. Rumble! The clear sky above suddenly darkened, thunder echoing through the clouds. Purple lightning crackled around Lisa, and as she summoned a grimoire, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky, blasting a hole through the roof of the Knights of Favonius headquarters, and striking Roy. He was engulfed in purple lightning. Rumble! The ground shook, and a large crater formed where Roy had been standing. Lisa stared intently at the dissipating lightning, her eyes widening in shock. Roy was still there, floating above the crater, completely unharmed. Snap! Roy snapped his fingers, and the Knights of Favonius headquarters was instantly restored, the storm clouds above vanishing. He had summoned those clouds himself, cooperating with her performance. After all, in this pocket dimension, Lisa's power was limited. Summoning a thunderstorm on her own would be difficult. How? Lisa couldn't believe it. Her full-powered attack hadn't even scratched him. This was a blow to her pride as a genius. Roy reappeared before her, pulling her into his arms. Lisa was startled and tried to push him away, but she was exhausted from her earlier spell and couldn't break free. And even if she wasn't tired, she, a mage, was no match for Roy's physical strength. You lost our bet, Lisa. You're mine now, Roy said with a smirk, his face close to hers. I, Lisa stammered, flustered. The usually composed and confident Lisa, the mature and seductive librarian, was reduced to a blushing mess in Roy's embrace. She was just a woman now. No more excuses. We made a deal. Are you going back on your word? Roy asked playfully. Lisa bit her lip, unwilling to become this stranger's wife. Despite her age, she had never been in a relationship. The thought of suddenly becoming someone's wife was unacceptable. You wanted me to release Jean, didn't you? Become my wife, and I'll let her go. Otherwise, I won't just take you and Jean. I'll destroy all of Mondstadt, Roy said, a menacing glint in his eyes. Fine, I agree. But you have to keep your promise, Lisa said, finally relenting. As a citizen of Mondstadt, protecting her city was her priority, even if it meant sacrificing herself. She was sure Jean, if she ever regained her senses, would understand. That's more like it. I genuinely like you both, Roy said with a smirk, his hand already resting on Lisa's ample chest. His. So big. Terrifyingly so. What are you doing? Even Lisa, usually so composed, was flustered. After all, she was still inexperienced. What do you think? Or should I choose Jean instead? Roy raised an eyebrow. Lisa glanced at Jean, standing obediently nearby, then sighed in defeat. She had no choice. The space around them shattered like a mirror. They were back in the real world. Lisa frowned. She had sensed a spatial distortion earlier. Her attack should have alerted the Knights of Favonius. But no one had come. What kind of ability was this? Lisa looked at Roy questioningly. Roy, ignoring her thoughts, said to Jean, You can all go back to what you were doing. Then, he swept Lisa into his arms, bridal style, and vanished. In a small room within the library, Lisa's private resting area, it became the battlefield where she lost her virginity. While inexperienced under Roy's expert guidance, Lisa soon discovered her own hidden desires. Chapter 343, Lisa's Assistants, Barbara at the Cathedral. A 30-year-old woman was at the peak of her vitality. After Roy unlocked the gates of her desire, Lisa couldn't hold back. They spent the next 3 days in the library's small room. While people frequently came to the library to read or clean, no one discovered their activities. While some were puzzled by Lisa's absence, they didn't think much of it. Lisa was a mysterious figure in their eyes. Roy, can you tell me who you really are now? Lisa asked, nestled in Roy's arms on the small bed in her private room. The bed was too small for both of them, so she had to lie on top of him. Roy, holding Lisa's mature and voluptuous form, smirked. I'm actually a demon lord from outside Teyvat. Demon lord? Lisa was startled. That explained his incomprehensible abilities. Even she, a powerful mage, was powerless against him. He was from beyond Teyvat? And what are you doing in Mondstadt? This was the question that truly concerned her. After 3 days of intimacy, Lisa had given herself to this man, body and soul. She had to know his intentions. If he posed a threat to Mondstadt, she would stop him, even if it meant sacrificing herself. Of course, I plan to do. Ahem. As a demon lord, I do whatever comes to mind. Right now, I just want to gather all the beautiful women in Mondstadt and make them my servants. Roy grinned, openly revealing his desires. Lisa frowned, then she relaxed. So he was a powerful being who acted on whims? At least he wasn't purely evil. A morally ambiguous demon lord, she could accept that. But wouldn't this mean Mondstadt's girls were in danger? Lisa sighed. Roy, can you release Jean from your control? Call me hubby, Roy said with a smirk. Lisa blushed, then said without hesitation, Hubby. Good girl. Roy was surprised by her easy compliance. Conquering this mature and cunning woman had been surprisingly straightforward. If possible, he preferred not to use his charm magic. Although charm magic didn't affect their personalities or actions, something always felt missing when they were with him. Hubby, can you release Jean from your charm now? Lisa asked. Of course. But you have to persuade Jean, Roy said. I will. But Roy, you must promise not to harm Mondstadt. Don't worry. I'm only interested in beautiful women, Roy said with a casual wave of his hand. That afternoon, they finally emerged from the library's small room. They went to the acting grandmaster's office. Knock, knock. Come in. Lisa opened the door. Lisa? I haven't seen you in days. Where have you been? Jean, busy with the paperwork on her desk, looked up briefly, then returned to her work. I was meeting someone special, Lisa said, glancing at Roy. Jean seemed to have returned to normal. Roy had kept his promise and released her, Amber, and Eula from his control. This warmed her heart. It seemed the man who had taken everything from her was a man of his word. Someone special? Jean looked up again, her gaze falling on the incredibly handsome man beside Lisa. Jean was momentarily stunned. So, Jean, what do you think? He's quite charming, isn't he? Lisa asked, approaching Jean with a smile. What? Jean blushed and looked down, trying to focus on her work, but she couldn't concentrate. Jean, you're not getting any younger. It's time to find a man. It would ease your burden. And I think Roy is a good choice. Lisa continued. Roy. Jean looked at the smiling man again, intrigued by the unfamiliar name. She felt a strange sense of familiarity with him. And she didn't dislike him. I'm not thinking about that right now, she said shyly, rejecting Lisa's suggestion. Jean, the Fatri have been increasingly active lately. Something big is about to happen. You know the Knight's current situation. Roy is incredibly powerful. He can help us overcome this crisis, Lisa said, trying a different approach. Are you recommending him for the Knights? Where is he from? I've never seen him before. Is he a friend of yours, Lisa? Jean asked, confused. He's a friend from Sumeru. Lisa couldn't reveal Roy's true identity. That would be too complicated. If you recommend him so highly, Lisa, I'll make an exception and allow him to join the Knights. But he'll have to start from the bottom, Jean said with a smile. Lisa, hearing this, looked at Roy. If he refused, they would be in trouble. A knight? That doesn't sound so bad, Roy mused. Becoming a knight would actually make things easier. Phew. Lisa sighed in relief. After leaving Jean's office. Roy, give me some time. I'll convince Jean. You don't want a wife who's being controlled, do you? Lisa said. All right, Roy said, agreeing to give Lisa a chance. Thank you. Lisa was relieved. Then do your best. I'm leaving. And with that, Roy vanished. Lisa sighed. She could only hope he wouldn't corrupt too many girls. Meanwhile, at the Favonius Cathedral, the atmosphere was quiet and reverent, despite the crowds of people. They were praying to Barbatos, the Anemo Archon. Recent incidents at Stormterror's lair had unnerved the citizens of Mondstadt. Only through prayer to Barbatos could they find peace. Barbatos-sama, please protect Mondstadt. Roy heard a sweet voice praying. He looked up and saw a girl with golden twin tails, dressed in a white nun's habit, her eyes closed in prayer. This adorable girl was Barbara. The reason he had come to the cathedral. Roy's lips twitched, hearing her prayer. Too bad Barbatos is a man. Barbara's eyes snapped open, and she turned to face him, her gaze sharp. Barbatos-sama is a beautiful and gentle goddess. How could she be a man? You're not from Mondstadt, are you? Realizing he was an outsider, Barbara's anger subsided. It was understandable that outsiders wouldn't know about Barbatos. Barbatos is female? Roy asked, confused. That wasn't what he remembered. He looked at the statue of Barbatos in the cathedral square and noticed that it had breasts. What was going on? Was Barbatos actually female in this world? Barbara, seeing his confusion, explained gently. Of course, Barbatos-sama is female. She's a kind and gentle goddess who... After listening to Barbara for a while, Roy confirmed that Barbatos was indeed female in this world. It was strange. But this was even better. His first thought was to make Barbatos his servant. Then, he would collect all 7 archons. And the heavenly principles and its sustainer, along with all the adepti. He wouldn't let any of them escape. With that in mind, Roy had a clear goal now. Of course, he wouldn't neglect his research on the simulated star creation map. While collecting Tevat's gods as servants wouldn't significantly increase his power, every bit helped. To truly break through, he needed Shiroyasha to reclaim her divinity. Dominating Little Garden was only a matter of time. Of course, everything had to happen at the right time. For now, he would simply enjoy himself. You must be thirsty after talking so much. Here's some water. Seeing Barbara still praising Barbatos, Roy didn't interrupt her. He simply offered her a glass of water. Oh, thank you. To his surprise, Barbara took the glass and drank it without hesitation. Roy smiled. Barbara, tell me more about Barbatos, Roy said after she finished drinking, taking the glass from her and taking a sip himself. Of course, as her follower, it's my duty. Barbara smiled brightly, then continued her story about the Anemo Archon's heroic deeds. Chapter 344, Rosaria's Submission. Sir, please don't do that. If you keep doing that, I won't be able to tell you about Lord Barbatos. Barbara gasped, her face flushed and breathing heavily after Roy's ministrations. Barbara, as a devout follower of Barbatos, you shouldn't be so easily distracted, Roy said with mock seriousness. Why, you're right. I apologize. I'll continue. Barbara, trying to ignore the tingling sensations, attempted to resume her story. But her body suddenly jolted, and she collapsed against Roy, her strength gone. Huh! Roy looked at his hand. It was wet. As expected of Barbara. He chuckled. What are you doing? A cold voice startled him. Roy turned to see a woman with long red hair, dressed in a red and white nun's habit, red fishnet stockings, and most notably, an incredibly impressive bust. Even among Roy's servants, few possessed such assets. It was truly remarkable. Rosaria? I was just looking for you. About the choir. Barbara, seeing her, was surprised and oblivious to her current state. Barbara, what is your relationship with this man? And you're doing this kind of thing here? Rosaria's brow furrowed. While she wasn't a particularly devout nun herself, the cathedral was a sacred place. Such behavior was unacceptable, especially for Barbara, Mondstadt's beloved idol and deaconess of the Favonius Church. Huh! What did I do? Barbara asked, confused. She had simply been telling a traveler about Barbatos. Why was Rosaria so angry? Rosaria, seeing Barbara's clueless expression, glared at Roy. He must have forced himself on Barbara. While she often wasn't at the cathedral, she knew who Barbara interacted with. And this stranger wasn't among them. And such inappropriate behavior with Barbara? Unthinkable. Something was definitely wrong. And why hadn't anyone else in the cathedral intervened? Who are you? Rosaria demanded, summoning a spear seemingly out of thin air and pointing it at Roy. Rosaria, what are you doing? Barbara asked, startled. Barbara, do you know this man? Why are you doing this with him? Rosaria's voice was cold and sharp. Doing what? I was just telling him about Barbatos-sama. Barbara said, puzzled. Move aside. Rosaria, unable to get a straight answer, prepared to attack. She wasn't one for words. Roy chuckled. He had cast a spell on everyone in the cathedral but had forgotten about Rosaria, who had just arrived. She had discovered his secret. But this wasn't a bad thing. Snap! Roy snapped his fingers, and Rosaria involuntarily lowered her polearm. What? Rosaria was shocked to find her body moving against her will. It's magic. You can't resist, Roy said with a smirk. He then had Rosaria sit beside him and reached out to appreciate her assets. Impressive. Even Jean and Lisa can't compare, he commented, appreciating the form and firmness. Damn it. What have you done to me? Rosaria gritted her teeth. She couldn't believe she was being molested, and she couldn't even resist. Who was this man? Who am I? I'm your boyfriend, of course. Roy chuckled, his hands still busy. I won't let you get away with this. Rosaria snarled, a memory flashing through her mind, the day her village was destroyed by bandits, and Varka, the Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius, rescued her. Roy's eyes narrowed, sensing her thoughts. He wouldn't tolerate any other man in the hearts of the women he claimed, even if Rosaria and Varka weren't romantically involved. Fine, I'll stop, Roy said, releasing her and smoothing out her clothes. Don't think this means I'll forgive you. Rosaria glared at him. I don't like that look. Snap. Roy snapped his fingers, and everyone in the cathedral was instantly transported to a mountain valley, surrounded by hilichurls and abyss mages. Now you know what's about to happen. Beg, and I'll let them go. How about it? Roy whispered in Rosaria's ear, a menacing glint in his eyes. Rosaria, seeing the scene unfold, understood his intentions. He was using the lives of the nuns and the other people in the cathedral as leverage. She gritted her teeth but remained silent. No? Then let the show begin. Roy snapped his fingers again, and the hilichurls and abyss mages charged towards the trapped people, their cries and screams echoing through the valley. Even with her eyes closed, Rosaria couldn't escape the horrific scene unfolding before her. Enough! Stop! Oh! Roy waved his hand, and the monsters froze. I agree. Just let them go, and Barbara. I'll let them go. But not Barbara. Roy smirked, enjoying her conflicted expression. He finally understood the appeal of being a villain. It was interesting. Rosaria gritted her teeth again. Fine. Release them. Easy. Roy snapped his fingers, and the world around them shattered like a mirror. They were back in the cathedral. The people were still praying, as if nothing had happened. Rosaria, after a moment of stunned silence, realized it had been an illusion. A wave of fear washed over her. This man, he had played her like a fiddle. It was terrifying. Who are you? She asked again, her voice trembling. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Roy, a new recruit in the Knights of Favonius. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sister Rosaria, Roy said with a formal bow. Knights of Favonius? Impossible! Why your abilities? They don't have anything like that, Rosaria said, shaking her head. She didn't believe him. Fine. Roy sighed, giving up on the pretense. I'm a demon lord from beyond Teyvat. And soon, not just Mondstadt, but all of Teyvat will be under my control. Even the heavenly principles and its sustainer. Understand? Demon lord? Rosaria frowned, unfamiliar with the term. If he really was a demon lord, his strange abilities made sense. And his ambition, to rule all of Teyvat? That was bold. She took a deep breath. And what is your purpose in Mondstadt? She didn't care about the rest of Teyvat. Only Mondstadt mattered. My purpose? I'm here to make Barbatos my servant. And you as well, of course, Roy said with a smirk. So, if you refuse to become my servant, I might just have to destroy Mondstadt. Mondstadt was her home, her only home. She protected it every night. She wouldn't let anyone destroy it. But this demon lord. He was incredibly powerful, even claiming he would make Barbatos, one of the 7 Archons, his servant. She couldn't think of any way to save Mondstadt, other than compliance. Chapter 345, Dealing with Barbara and Rosaria, the Factory and La Signora. Alas, I don't usually force anyone. If you're not willing, then forget it, Roy said, turning to leave with Barbara still in his arms. Rosaria's eyes narrowed. He was clearly coercing her, having used his abilities to control Barbara. If he really wasn't forcing anyone, he would have released Barbara. While she wanted to call him out on his hypocrisy, she couldn't risk angering this demon lord. Mondstadt's safety was at stake. Just as he was about to leave, Rosaria gritted her teeth. Wait. I agree to your terms. But you must keep your promise, you can't harm Mondstadt. Heh, I've made that promise to several people already. Don't worry, I won't harm Mondstadt. In fact, I'll even protect it, Roy said, turning back with a smirk, his arm now around Rosaria's waist. What? Hearing that he had made similar promises to others, Rosaria felt a pang of unease. Had she been tricked? Then, remembering that he had joined the Knights of Favonius, a disturbing thought crossed her mind. Could it be you and acting Grand Master Jean? Well, thanks to Lisa, I haven't made a move on Jean yet. But don't worry, I'll rectify that soon. Roy chuckled, leading Rosaria and Barbara towards the back of the cathedral, one arm around each of them. Rosaria sighed. She couldn't resist. Arriving in Barbara's room, Roy turned his attention to Rosaria without ceremony. And as expected of the woman with Teyvat's most impressive assets, the experience was unique. When it was Barbara's turn, he released her from his charm. Then, with a combination of persuasion and coercion, he successfully claimed Barbara as well. 3 days later, Roy, with a now thoroughly subdued Barbara and Rosaria, left the cathedral and strolled through the streets of Mondstadt. Good morning, Barbara! Barbara, what are you doing out shopping? Who's this with you, Barbara? As Mondstadt's idol, Barbara was loved by everyone. People, young and old, greeted her enthusiastically. Some even asked about Roy's identity. But Barbara kept their relationship a secret. If she revealed that Roy was her beloved, Mondstadt would be in an uproar. Roy, seeing her reluctance, didn't press the matter. She was his now. He would indulge her. You two go ahead. I'll wander around for a bit, Roy said, noticing their discomfort. He figured exploring alone would be more interesting. Just as they were about to leave, the clear sky above suddenly darkened, storm clouds gathering. Powerful gusts of wind made it difficult to see. Roar! An angry roar echoed through Mondstadt. A massive shadow descended from the storm clouds, its powerful wings generating even stronger winds. What is that? Barbara stumbled, but Roy caught her. Is that one of the 4 winds? Rosaria asked, her brow furrowed. She had heard legends of Mondstadt's 4 winds but had never seen one. That's Dvalin, the dragon of the east wind, Roy confirmed. He hadn't expected Dvalin to appear now. Did this mean the main storyline was beginning? Then, the traveler must be arriving soon. A plan formed in his mind. Roy, can you help us? Barbara asked, her large eyes pleading. Of course. Roy nodded. Yay! Barbara's face lit up. Dealing with Dvalin is no problem. But we have to wait, Roy said, then turned and left with Barbara and Rosaria. Why? Barbara asked, confused. If he could solve the problem, why wait? We're waiting for Barbatos and the Traveler. Roy smirked, not explaining further. Dvalin didn't stay long above Mondstadt. It seemed he still retained some of his sanity. The citizens of Mondstadt were relieved. But the incident was taken seriously. The Knights of Favonius were on high alert. They weren't worried about Dvalin, but the Fatui. With Mondstadt in a state of unease, the Fatui might try to take advantage of the situation. But Roy wasn't concerned. After Barbara and Rosaria left, he wandered through Mondstadt alone. A group of Fatui agents hurried past him, bumping into him. Watch where you're going, kid! One of them snarled. The Fatui agent, having bumped into Roy, was the one who stumbled. But his attitude was unpleasant. Who are you calling kid? Roy asked with a smile. Why? Now's not the time. We have to report to La Signora, another agent said, pulling his companion away. I'll deal with you later, the first agent said, glaring at Roy, as if memorizing his face for future retribution. Did I say you could leave? You bumped into me. That requires compensation, Roy said coldly, stopping them. Kid, we're Fatui. You really want to pick a fight with us? The agent, surprised by Roy's persistence, drew a dagger and approached him menacingly. While he couldn't kill him outright, this was Mondstadt. After all, a little punishment wouldn't hurt. The Knights of Favonius wouldn't interfere. This time, his companions didn't stop him. How foolish! Roy chuckled. As the agent approached. Crack! The ground froze, the ice spreading to the agent's feet. Before he could react, his legs were frozen solid. He stopped, confused, then tried to move, but he couldn't feel his legs. He looked down. His legs were encased in ice. What? His eyes widened in horror as the ice continued to spread upwards. He tried to break free. And his upper body separated from his lower body, his frozen legs remaining stuck to the ground. Ea! He screamed, the chilling cold terrifying him, despite the lack of pain from his frozen nerves. His screams drew the attention of the other Fatui agents and the surrounding citizens. Some even went to inform the Knights of Favonius. The Fatui were known for their arrogance in Mondstadt. Citizens avoided them. Only the Knights could deal with them. What did you do? The other Fatui agents surrounded Roy. More Fatui emerged from the Goth Grand Hotel. So many Fatui. Is you 8th Harbinger La Signora here? Roy asked, looking around curiously. She's here. And you're dead. Even the Knights of Favonius can't save you. The Fatui agents snarled, but they didn't attack. They were waiting for La Signora. She's in Mondstadt? Roy's eyes lit up. While La Signora wasn't exactly popular among Genshin players, she had her reasons for being the way she was. Roy walked towards the Goth Grand Hotel. The Fatui agents tried to stop him, but they were instantly frozen, then shattered into icy dust by a gentle breeze. He entered the hotel unimpeded. La Signora emerged. You're the one who attacked the Fatui? She asked, her voice cold and arrogant. She had long white hair, a mask covering half her face, and a figure that was eye-catching, to say the least. 2 slender Electro-Sisson mages stood behind her, their faces hidden by masks. Chapter 346, Kia, Cavalry Captain. Barbatos and the Traveler appear. Playing with ice in front of me? Even your Tsaritsa wouldn't stand a chance. Roy snapped his fingers. The incoming ice spike stopped midair, then turned and aimed at La Signora. Impossible! La Signora's eyes widened in disbelief. Her own power, controlled by someone else? Here you go. Swish! The ice spike shot towards La Signora, pinning her to the ground before she could react. Damn it! Humiliated and enraged, La Signora unleashed her cryo power, transforming the hotel into a frozen wasteland. It's useless. You're still too weak, Roy said, shaking his head, then waved his hand, and the elemental energy subsided. The frozen landscape returned to normal. This can't be. La Signora couldn't believe her power had been so easily suppressed. Now be a good girl and become my servant. Roy teleported to La Signora's side and pulled her into his arms. Let me go. She struggled, pounding her fists against his chest, but her strength quickly faded. Behave yourself. Becoming my servant isn't something to be ashamed of. And you too. Roy looked at the Electro-Sisson mages. No tricks. The two mages exchanged glances. They were about to attack, but they couldn't access their electro powers. They panicked. Suddenly, Kia, the cavalry captain, entered with several knights of Favonius, then froze, his jaw dropping as he saw La Signora in Roy's arms. La Signora, usually so arrogant and domineering in Mondstadt, was being held by a stranger, and she wasn't even resisting. This shattered Kia's understanding of the world. Captain Kia, this doesn't concern you. Leave, Roy said, waving them away dismissively. He didn't have time to deal with the knights. Who are you? What's your relationship with the factory? Kia, however, didn't leave. He had to investigate. He had received reports of a conflict involving the factory and had rushed over. While Storm Terror was still a threat, the factory's situation seemed more pressing. I'm a new recruit in the Knights of Favonius. Ask Acting Grand Master Jean if you don't believe me, Roy said, carrying La Signora into the hotel. The Electro-Sisson mages obediently followed. Kia frowned. A new recruit? But he was acting so familiar with the factory. What was going on? Was he a factory spy within the Knights? He decided to report to Jean immediately. Meanwhile, Roy had already implanted evil pieces within La Signora and the two Electro-Sisson mages. Within moments, they were transformed into devils. Don't think this means I'll submit to you, La Signora snarled. Besides the Tsaritsa, she wouldn't bow to anyone. Is that so? Excellent. Don't give up too easily. It would be boring, Roy chuckled. He enjoyed her defiant attitude. He hoped she would maintain this spirit. He then proceeded to discipline La Signora. And the two Electro-Sisson mages, of course, weren't spared either. Several days later, after Roy's thorough training, La Signora had finally submitted, much to his disappointment. He preferred her feisty, defiant spirit. During these past few days, Mondstadt was suffering. Storm Terror's attacks were becoming more frequent, and the surrounding towns were being affected. If this continued, Storm Terror would eventually attack Mondstadt itself. In the Acting Grand Master's office, Jean, I brought Roy, Lisa announced, leading Roy into the room. Jean, her brow furrowed as she looked at the documents on her desk, didn't seem to hear her. Storm Terror was a constant source of worry. But the factory had been quiet lately. That was a small blessing. Jean? Lisa called out, approaching her. Jean finally looked up. Lisa? What is it? Lisa sighed. I told you, Roy can handle Storm Terror. That's why I brought him here. Roy? Jean frowned, looking at Roy. While she trusted Lisa, dealing with Storm Terror wasn't a trivial matter. And killing Storm Terror wasn't an option. He was one of Mondstadt's 4 winds. She wouldn't allow it. Do you have a solution? Roy yawned. He wasn't particularly interested in dealing with Storm Terror. He was here because Lisa had insisted. He couldn't refuse her request. Lisa, knowing this, had sought him out. Mondstadt was in danger. If the Storm Terror situation wasn't resolved soon, it would be a disaster for both the Knights and the city. Suddenly, Roy's gaze shifted towards the entrance to Mondstadt. Walls couldn't block his vision. Amber was leading a blonde girl, the traveler, into the city, accompanied by a certain emergency food. It seemed the time had come. And if the traveler was here, Barbatos must also be in Mondstadt. With a single thought, Roy located Barbatos, drinking in a tavern in the city. She was indeed here. It was time to deal with Storm Terror. Don't worry, I'll handle Storm Terror, Roy said. Lisa's eyes lit up. How? Jean asked, still skeptical. I won't kill him. I know he's one of Mondstadt's 4 winds. Jean, I'm glad you're finally considering it. Lisa smiled, relieved. It seemed her efforts to persuade Jean had paid off. Mondstadt was safe. But if Jean knew about the other girls... Lisa sighed. She knew about Roy's activities over the past few days. She knew he had taken both Barbara and Rosaria. And even La Signora. That's why, despite the current crisis, the factory hadn't been causing trouble in Mondstadt. She didn't know whether to be happy or worried. Meanwhile, Roy teleported to the tavern and found Barbatos, sipping her drink. This wine is quite good, Barbatos commented, seemingly oblivious to Roy's sudden appearance. Of course, even if she had noticed, she wouldn't have cared. Barbatos, enjoying yourself? Roy asked, sitting beside her and revealing her identity. Huh! Barbatos blinked, then looked around. Are you talking to me? Don't play dumb, Barbatos. I know who you are. Roy snatched her wine glass. Hey! My wine! Barbatos tried to grab the glass back, but Roy held her shoulder, preventing her from moving. Want your wine? Roy smirked. Barbatos stopped struggling and looked at him carefully. Who are you? Listen carefully. I am a demon lord from another world, and I'm going to rule this world. So, Barbatos, one of the 7 archons, submit to me, Roy declared. Have you been drinking, young man? Barbatos chuckled, amused by his words. Chapter 347, Barbatos, Lumen arrives. Roy rolled his eyes. He had been a bit dramatic. Snap! He snapped his fingers, and they were transported to a subspace. It resembled Mondstadt but was devoid of people. Barbatos shivered, the sudden change in temperature sobering her up. This. Now do you believe me? Roy asked, pulling her into a tight embrace and looking at her closely. She was dressed in a greenish-blue bard's outfit, her face delicate and cute, her figure surprisingly curvaceous. While it was difficult to reconcile this image with the Barbatos in his memories, it wasn't a bad thing. Are you really a demon lord from another world? Barbatos asked, not resisting his embrace. She didn't seem bothered by the physical contact, more curious about his identity. Of course. Now become my servant. Roy smiled, summoning an evil peace. Barbatos hesitated. If she agreed, she would lose the freedom she cherished. That was unacceptable. You refuse? Do you really think you can survive under the heavenly principle's suppression indefinitely? 1,000 years? 2,000? Eventually, all 7 archons will fall to erosion. Roy knew about the erosion in this world, a force that wore down the minds and wills of all beings over time. Powerful beings like Azdaha couldn't escape its influence, driven to madness by erosion's insidious whispers. Barbatos had slept for millennia to avoid erosion's grasp. Raiden Shogun had created a puppet to rule Inazuma while she hid in the plain of Euthymia. Even the mighty Rex Lapis, Morix, couldn't resist erosion's relentless assault. It was a terrifying force. Do you have a solution? Barbatos asked, her voice quiet. Of course. I will reign supreme, even above the heavenly principles. This entire world will be under my control. As Roy spoke, the subspace shifted. They were now standing in the void, overlooking Teyvat. You can change this world? Barbatos asked after a moment of silence. Of course. This world is incomplete. In other worlds, beings can live for tens of thousands, even millions, of years without succumbing to erosion. So, I believe that erosion is a symptom of this world's incompleteness. And you have no other choice, Barbatos. Become my servant. Roy said, no longer bothering with explanations. If Barbados still refused, he would resort to other methods. MMPH. Barbados's eyes widened. MNNNN. Roy had captured her lips in a kiss, his arms holding her firmly, preventing her from escaping. A strange sensation washed over her, something she had never experienced in her millennia of existence. Was this what it felt like to connect with another being? Barbados was momentarily lost in thought, but Roy's wandering hands quickly brought her back to reality. Her sensitive body couldn't withstand his touch, and she could only submit. Roy, without hesitation, took Barbados's first time. Several days passed in the subspace. But in the real world, only a few minutes had passed. When Roy emerged with Barbados, she had been thoroughly conquered. That smells wonderful! Barbados, smelling the wine, was instantly distracted. Here. Roy handed her a selection of wines he had collected from various worlds. Wow! This smells amazing! Barbados uncorked a bottle and took a sniff, her face filled with delight. Roy chuckled. Even after becoming his, her personality hadn't changed. But it was a good thing. This was the Venti he knew and appreciated. Roy, you said you could change this world. Show me, Venti said, sipping her wine, not forgetting his earlier promise. Of course. When the time is right, I'll lead the 7 Archons to Celestia and discipline the sustainer of heavenly principles, Roy said. So you need to make the other Archons your servants too? Venti quickly deduced. Yes. I won't let a single one escape. Don't worry, you won't have to wait long. Among the 7, only Zhongli posed a challenge. He was, after all, a male. Roy hadn't taken any male servants yet. But since Barbados was female in this world, perhaps Zhongli was too. Enjoy your wine. I'm going to meet the traveler, Roy said. Is she your sister? Venti asked curiously. Something like that, Roy replied. A little sister by another definition. He went to find Amber and Lumen, the traveler. As if on cue, Storm Terror appeared above Mondstadt. Of course, it wasn't a coincidence. In the original story, Storm Terror's attack coincided with Lumen's arrival. And this time, it was different. In his previous attacks, Storm Terror had only unleashed powerful winds. He hadn't directly attacked the city. But now, he summoned several tornadoes that ripped through Mondstadt. People screamed and fled in panic. The city was in chaos. A perfect opportunity for a heroic rescue, Roy mused, watching Amber and Lumen, frozen in place by the approaching tornadoes. Without Barbados to protect them, they were in danger. Lumen, run! Amber yelled, grabbing Lumen's hand. But they were too slow. The tornadoes engulfed them. Just as they braced for impact, they found themselves, unharmed, floating in the air. Roy! Amber, seeing Roy holding her, was overjoyed. Who? Lumen, her waist held securely by Roy, looked up at him, her face flushing at the proximity. She turned to Amber, seeking an explanation. It's Roy, Amber said cheerfully. Roy, this is Lumen, the traveler I told you about. Hello, Lumen, Roy said with a smile and a nod. Hello. Lumen stammered shyly and looked down, flustered by his touch. Roy, Storm Terror seems to have gone berserk. He's attacking Mondstadt. Can you do something? Amber pleaded. It seems we can't wait any longer. I'll handle it. Now that Barbados and Lumen were here, it was time to deal with Storm Terror. Roy waved his hand, and snowflakes began to fall around Storm Terror, freezing onto his scales. Before Storm Terror could react. Crack! Within moments, the entire dragon was frozen solid. Amazing! Amber clapped excitedly. Is he dead? Lumen, stunned, asked. She hadn't expected him to be subdued so easily. Of course not. He's one of Mondstadt's guardians. Roy chuckled. Guardian? Lumen was curious. He's one of the 4 winds. Amber eagerly began to explain. We'll talk later. We need to move him somewhere else. Roy flew away with Amber, Lumen, and the frozen Storm Terror. Back at the Knights of Favonius headquarters. Jean, see? I told you he could handle it, Lisa said proudly. He's incredible. But why would someone so powerful join the Knights? Jean wondered, still amazed by Roy's power. She had never heard of anyone so strong. And what was his purpose in joining the Knights? And Kia had reported seeing him with the Fatui. Jean's suspicions about Roy grew. Chapter 348, Healing Storm Terror. Storm Terror becomes a pet. Lisa sensed trouble. If Jean became suspicious of Roy, all her efforts to speak favorably of him would be wasted. Jean, I know Kia told you about Roy and the Fatui, but you can rest assured. Roy has nothing to do with them. Why do you say that? Even Jean could tell Lisa was defending Roy. And that was what puzzled her. She knew Lisa well and trusted her judgment. Lisa wouldn't recommend someone without good reason. Lisa, facing Jean's question, was at a loss. She wasn't used to lying. But she had to come up with an explanation. Well, Roy is so powerful. Why would he join an organization like the Fatui? That makes sense. But the Fatui Harbingers are incredibly strong. The top-ranking Harbingers are said to rival even the gods. Jean's suspicion was clear. She was practically accusing Roy of being a Harbinger. Lisa's headache intensified. Jean suspected Roy was a Fatui Harbinger? That was impossible. Roy was a demon lord from another world, far more powerful than the 7 Archons, even the heavenly principles. Lisa, trust me, Roy is definitely not. Just as Lisa was about to explain, Kia arrived with several knights. Seeing the two of them talking, he quickly approached. Acting Grand Master Jean, Lisa, this isn't the time for idle chatter. That man took Storm Terror out of Mondstadt. We should investigate. He's one of the 4 winds. We can't let anything happen to him, Kia said. Jean frowned. You're right. We'll discuss this later, Lisa. Let's go check on Storm Terror. Kia, have your men keep an eye on the Fatui. Report any unusual activity immediately. Understood. Kia nodded. Jean, without further ado, hurried out of the city with Lisa and a few knights. Meanwhile, under a large tree in Windrise, Roy gently placed the frozen Storm Terror on the ground. Barbatos was already there, her gaze fixed on the frozen dragon, her expression melancholic. Dvalin, don't worry, I'll have him back to normal soon, Roy reassured her. That person, Lumen, who had seen Barbatos earlier, recognized her. What's wrong, traveler? Have you met her before? Amber asked, looking at Lumen curiously. I saw her with Storm Terror earlier. Lumen recalled her first encounter with Storm Terror, and how she and Paimon had been terrified. That was scary! I'm glad I hid. Paimon, appearing out of nowhere, exclaimed, patting her chest dramatically. Roy, who is she? Amber asked, curious about Barbatos' identity. I'm a bard. Call me Venti, Barbatos said, introducing herself. It's you. We met before, she said, recognizing Lumen. You're that weird green bard. Paimon added. Hey, if it weren't for you. Never mind. Barbatos trailed off. It was in the past now. Even without the interruption, she wasn't sure she could have cleansed Dvalin of the corruption. Lumen, realizing she had interfered, blushed, embarrassed. But their attention was quickly drawn to Storm Terror. Crack! Crack! The ice encasing the dragon began to shatter. Within moments, Dvalin broke free. But, suppressed by Roy's power, he seemed to have regained some of his sanity. Barbatos! Dvalin looked at Barbatos, as if wanting to say something, then sighed. Dvalin, I'm sorry, Barbatos said, her voice filled with regret. Let me cleanse that corruption. Roy waved his hand, and the dark energy clinging to Dvalin's back, the corruption even Barbatos couldn't remove, vanished. Feeling the corruption lift, Dvalin roared, his strength returning. Roar! The powerful roar echoed through Wind Rise. Jean and the others, searching for Storm Terror, heard it. That's him! Let's go! Jean led them towards the sound. Jean, Lisa, and the knights soon found them. Seeing Storm Terror back to normal, Jean and Lisa exchanged relieved glances. The Storm Terror situation had been a major source of stress. Meanwhile, Storm Terror, now free from the corruption, approached Roy, not Barbatos. Roy was surprised but not entirely unprepared. Barbatos, it seems Dvalin doesn't like you very much, he teased, looking at Barbatos's awkward expression. Hey, well, I'm partly responsible for the curse on him, and I didn't have the strength to remove it, Barbatos admitted, scratching her head sheepishly. Huh! Amber and Lumen, overhearing their conversation, were confused. Before they could ask, Jean and Lisa arrived. Roy, Amber, are you all right? Jean asked, concerned. We're fine, acting Grand Master, Amber said cheerfully. And who are they? Jean and Lisa looked at Lumen and Barbatos curiously. Ahem. I'm a traveling bard from afar. Call me Venti. Barbatos introduced herself quickly, before Roy could reveal her true identity. I'm Lumen, a traveler. Lumen added. Hello? It seems you played a part in Storm Terror's recovery. Please come back to the Knights of Favonius headquarters with us. I'd like to thank you properly, Jean said with a smile. Oh no, I didn't do anything. Roy saved me, Lumen said quickly, waving her hands. That's right. Roy's the one who saved Storm Terror, Amber said proudly. I didn't do anything either. It's all thanks to Roy, Barbatos added, winking playfully. Then Roy, thank you, Jean said sincerely. Despite her earlier suspicions, she was grateful. If it weren't for Roy, healing Storm Terror wouldn't have been so easy. She would have been overwhelmed. Don't mention it. As a Knight of Favonius, it's my duty, Roy said with a dismissive wave of his hand. Please come back to the headquarters with us. Jean would like to express her gratitude, Lisa said. Lumen, still searching for her brother, didn't refuse. I think I'll pass, Barbatos said, shaking her head. She wanted to enjoy the wine Roy had given her. She needed to find a quiet place to savor it. All right, Jean said, not pressing the matter. By the way, what should we do with Storm Terror? Lisa asked, looking at the now docile dragon. Roy thought for a moment. Dvalin, do you want to come back to Mondstadt with us, or return to your lair? Everyone turned to Dvalin, waiting for his answer. Dvalin, you're free to choose, Barbatos said. She didn't want to force him to stay in Mondstadt. Freedom was more important. Dvalin looked conflicted. Should he return to his lair and continue his lonely slumber? He had been alone for millennia. He didn't want to be alone anymore. Dvalin, freedom is important. But aimless freedom can be lonely. Why not stay in Mondstadt and see how the city has changed? Roy wanted Dvalin as a pet. Dvalin's eyes lit up. He was intrigued. I'll stay. I want to see how Mondstadt has changed, he said. Good. Roy smiled then, without warning, formed a master-servant contract with Dvalin. A flash of light, and the massive dragon shrunk down to the size of a hand. Wow! He's so cute! Amber exclaimed. The miniature Dvalin looked like a beautiful blue butterfly. Chapter 349, Lisa's Unsolved Mystery, Lumen's Compromise. Seeing the massive Storm Terror shrink down to such a small size surprised not only Amber but also Barbatos. She realized she had underestimated Roy's power. The ability to shrink Dvalin was astonishing. This difference in perspective stemmed from their contrasting worldviews. To Roy, transforming Dvalin into a miniature pet was child's play. Even a mid-class devil could accomplish such a feat. After Barbatos left, Roy, Amber, Lumen, and Paimon goes back to Mondstadt. In Jean's office at the Knights of Favonius headquarters. While the Storm Terror situation had been resolved, Jean still had a mountain of paperwork to deal with. After she finished, Lisa emerged from her office and, seeing Roy's relaxed demeanor, sighed in relief. Let's go. Jean's ready for you, she said. Thank you. Lumen nodded. She wanted to ask Jean about her brother, though she wasn't very hopeful. Roy, meanwhile, was playfully teasing the miniature Dvalin perched on his shoulder. They entered Jean's office. Sorry to keep you waiting, Jean said as they entered. It's fine, Lumen replied with a smile, glancing at Roy. Lumen, you have something to ask the acting Grand Master, right? Go ahead, Roy said. Oh, thank you. Lumen took a deep breath, then asked Jean about her brother. As expected, Jean didn't know anything about him. Lumen's face fell, though she had anticipated this. Traveler, if you want to find your brother, why not ask Roy? Lisa suggested, looking at Lumen thoughtfully. Huh? Lumen was confused. Lisa, seeing that Roy didn't object, continued. He's traveled extensively. He might know something. Really? Lumen looked at Roy, her eyes filled with hope. I do know a few things about your brother Ether, Roy admitted. He wasn't going to hide it. It would be fun to spoil the plot for her a bit. Please tell me. Lumen clasped her hands together, pleading. It's a long story. Simply put, your brother, Ether, is still alive. He started traveling in this world 500 years before you, and he's already formed his own beliefs, his own mission. Even if you find him, it won't be easy. Your ideas clash. Ether's goal was to revive Kenria, whose people had mostly become abyssal creatures. Lumen, on the other hand, had mostly fought against the abyss during her travels. Their opposing ideals meant they couldn't be together. Lumen frowned, then looked at Roy expectantly, waiting for him to continue. But Roy wasn't going to reveal everything just yet. He needed incentive. Seeing his silence, Lumen's hope dwindled. Traveler, if you want to know the answer, you have to find it yourself. I'm sure you'll find your brother eventually, Lisa said, comforting her. Lumen's spirits lifted slightly. Thank you. Knowing he's still alive is enough. I'll continue my journey and find him. I didn't say I wouldn't tell you, Roy suddenly said. Huh! Lumen had assumed she would have to search for the answer herself. This was a welcome surprise. If you want to know more about your brother, come find me, Roy said, winking at her. Lisa sighed, rolling her eyes. She knew what Roy was doing. He was manipulating Lumen. With Lumen's naivete, she would likely be conquered soon. Lisa felt a pang of something she couldn't quite define. Jean frowned at Roy's manipulative tactics but didn't intervene. Whether he told Lumen or not was his decision. And whether Lumen agreed was hers. It wasn't her place to interfere. Besides, she had her own problems to deal with. She glanced at the miniature Dvalin perched on Roy's shoulder, still finding it surreal. Storm Terror, as a pet? And so small? It was unbelievable. This, among other reasons, was why she couldn't interfere. Traveler, you'll be staying in Mondstadt for a while, right? If you need anything, come to the Knights of Favonius. I'll do what I can to help, Jean offered. Thank you, Acting Grand Master. Lumen nodded gratefully. She did need help. She hadn't even figured out where to stay or how to find food. But Jean had already considered this. The Knights had plenty of room. Accommodating her wouldn't be a problem. After leaving Jean's office, Lumen approached Roy. Roy, I want to know about my brother. Please tell me. That's easy. Become my servant, and I'll tell you everything, Roy said, looking at her with a smile. Servant? Lumen was confused. Then she remembered hearing the term during her travels. But wasn't a servant just a pet? Like how Dvalin was Barbados' servant. How can you ask for such a thing? Paimon exclaimed, indignant. I wasn't talking to you, little one. Besides, everything has a price, doesn't it? Roy chuckled, folding his arms. I'm not little, Paimon protested, stamping her foot, then turned to Lumen. Traveler, don't agree. He's a bad person. Lumen hesitated, unsure what to do. Roy, you're bullying Lumen again, Lisa said, emerging from Jean's office. She had overheard their conversation. It was just as she had suspected. Roy was manipulating Lumen. Lisa. Lumen looked at Lisa, her expression conflicted. She was truly pitiful. Lisa sighed and glared at Roy. I think you should lower your demands. How about just asking her to go out with you? I'm sure she'll agree to that. Huh! Lumen blushed. Becoming a servant felt degrading. She felt like a pet. But going out was different. If they were dating, that meant they might eventually marry? Fine. I'll lower my demands. Lumen, if you agree to be my girlfriend, I'll tell you everything about Ether, including where he is now. How about it? Roy shrugged. Everything, and his location? Lumen was tempted. Traveler, don't fall for his tricks. We can find your brother ourselves. Eventually, Paimon insisted. Roy raised an eyebrow and flicked his finger. Paimon vanished in a flash of light. Paimon? Lumen was worried. Relax, she's always clinging to you. I just sent her away, Roy explained. Lumen sighed in relief. Then, after a moment of contemplation, she finally made up her mind. I agree to be your girlfriend. But you have to help me find my brother. Roy smirked. No problem. Lisa sighed inwardly. Lumen hadn't been able to escape Roy's grasp after all. But perhaps this was the best outcome. Chapter 350, Solarictor Demon Lord, Grand Finale. Roy didn't waste words. He pulled Lumen close, wrapping an arm around her waist, and casually flicked Paimon away, sending her back to wherever she came from. Let's go, Lumen. I'll tell you about your brother. Lumen's face flushed. It was the first time someone other than her brother had touched her so intimately. She tried to pull away, remembering her promise to be his girlfriend and her desire to learn about her brother. So, she reluctantly allowed him to hold her. Roy smirked, his hand wandering a bit too freely. Lumen stopped his hand, her cheeks flushed. Can you tell me now? Of course. But we need a more private setting. This isn't the place for such a conversation. Roy led her towards the room the knights had provided for him. Lisa, watching them leave, sighed. Lisa, perhaps you should tell me about him now. Jean had approached Lisa unnoticed, having witnessed Roy's actions. While she had initially been swayed by Lisa's words, considering giving Roy a chance, his behavior had changed her mind. But she wasn't going to interfere. Lumen had made her own choice. She simply wanted to know more about Roy from Lisa. Lisa sighed. There was no point in hiding it any longer. Jean clearly disapproved of Roy. Convincing her to become his wife willingly was now impossible. She had to tell Jean everything. She just hoped Jean wouldn't do anything rash. A moment later. A demon lord from another world? He wants to rule Teyvat? Jean's brow furrowed as she listened to Lisa's explanation. That's right. He initially wanted you to be his wife. If you refused, Lisa had almost mentioned the charm, but she decided against it. What would happen? Jean asked. He would destroy Mondstadt. Lisa sighed. I see. That's why you've been defending him. Jean finally understood. That was why Lisa had been praising Roy so much. This was a matter of Mondstadt's survival. She had to take it seriously. And based on how easily he had frozen and then healed Storm Terror, even turning the dragon into a miniature pet, the title, Demon Lord, was likely accurate. He truly possessed the power to control Teyvat. Perhaps even the 7 Archons were no match for him. What should she do? Lisa, seeing her lost in thought, didn't interrupt. This was a disaster for Mondstadt. Unfortunately, Barbatos was nowhere to be found. And even if she appeared, would she be able to defeat this demon lord? Furthermore, Lisa didn't want Roy to lose. She was already his woman. She sighed. She didn't know that their Archon had already been conquered. Meanwhile, Roy, as promised, was telling Lumen about her brother, Ether. But halfway through the story, Lumen was already unresponsive. Roy, seeing this, decided to continue tomorrow. The next morning, Roy smirked, looking at Lumen sleeping peacefully in his arms. She was delightful. Now that he had claimed Lumen, he couldn't neglect her brother, Ether. Of course, he wouldn't find Ether immediately. Traveling through the 7 nations with Lumen, flirting with the local beauties, and then looking for Ether sounded much more appealing. And he wasn't leaving Mondstadt just yet. There were still a few unconquered territories. As he was planning his journey through Teyvat, his conquest of Kaching, Raiden Shogun, and Yae Miko, he felt a surge of power. Is that Shiroisha? He had instructed her to reclaim her divinity and return to Solarictyr. It seemed she had finally succeeded. It looks like my Teyvat journey will have to wait. Roy looked at Lumen, a thoughtful expression on his face. Little Garden, Outer Gates. Arcadia headquarters. Roy, having just returned, felt his power surging at an incredible rate, the immense energy affecting all of Little Garden. Rumble! Shiroisha, having reclaimed her divinity and returned to Solarictyr, caused Roy's power to surge as well, thanks to their devil contract. He was about to become a Solarictyr being himself. What's happening? Black Rabbit, Rias, Toru, Siko, and the others looked up at the sky, shocked by the immense power emanating from Roy. A tall figure appeared beside him. Who's that? Black Rabbit gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. Is she an enemy? Should we attack? Siko asked, her hand instinctively reaching for her sword. No. That's Shiroisha. The tall, elegant, and imposing figure beside Roy was indeed Shiroisha, transformed back into her true, adult form after reclaiming her divinity. She looked at Roy with interest. I see. So, by returning to Solarictyr, I've inadvertently boosted his power as well? How interesting. Shiroisha was intrigued. What secret was Roy hiding? He had bypassed Little Garden's rules and reached Solarictyr. She suspected his power was at least on par with, if not greater than, Little Garden's. Then, something even more shocking happened. The simulated star creation map in Roy's hand unfolded. Is that a simulated star creation map? Shiroisha, of course, recognized the artifact. Possessing it meant unlimited possibilities. This partially explained Roy's rapid power growth. But it also raised even more questions. The immense power radiating from Roy attracted the attention of all of Little Garden. Even powerful stellar-level beings, Zeus from Greek mythology, Odin from Norse mythology, Indra, and the Halloween Queen, gathered to witness the event. A Solaric-level ascension in Little Garden was a rare and significant event. Normally, they would have intervened, preventing such a disruption to the established order. But seeing Shiroisha standing beside Roy, they hesitated. Within moments, Roy's transformation was complete. He had reached Solaric level, the realm of semi-omniscience and omnipotence. He was now one of the strongest beings in Little Garden. With Azidahaka still slumbering, he could practically do as he pleased. Roy looked at the Halloween Queen, a predatory glint in his eyes. His next goal was to gather more servants and prepare for his ascension to Cosmic Tier. And his journey through Teyvat had only just begun. The end. That wraps up this part of What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Quick reminder. The series What If Reborn in Highschool DxD as a Lucifuge and What If a Venerated Soul Reincarnated in Danmachi World are now on hold, since we've caught up with the author. So now, I need your help picking the next project for the channel. I'm currently deciding between these 3 fanfics. What if creating the strongest Strawhat crew by reading manga? What if reincarnated in Bleach as Toshiro Hitsugaya? What if hosting Q&A in One Piece World? Please vote in the poll and let me know which 2 stories you'd like to see next. I'll take the top 2 picks and start working on those series next. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.